Let's switch to the domino effect here. This basically means, and we have some messages out to see if Arch is still going to visit Alabama. We'll see if that happens. I absolutely don't think that both of them would go there. But we'll see if he still wants to see Alabama and see if he wants to commit there. But that will be figured out. This does look like Georgia or Texas now. And the feeling is the college environment and the national championships and Todd Monken and playing for Kirby and how much Arch loves Athens is leaning toward the Georgia side. Or you could argue Texas with not only Sark, but A.J. Milway, the way they run their offense, how much they're going to pass the ball, and the opportunity to build that program into something special. Plus NIL considerations at both schools. Maybe Texas has the edge there. Where do you kind of see this playing out? Do you think it's Georgia, Texas now, two teams for Arch Manning?
Yeah, I believe so. Alabama most likely going to take one quarterback here in this class. We'll kind of see if they cancel Arch's visit here in the next few days or if maybe Arch moves on himself. But I think it always kind of shaped up to be a Georgia-Texas battle, and Alabama was always kind of flirting with Eli Holstein if they were able to get him in the class. And, how does that kind of shake out? But we're seeing that now. If this is kind of how I see it. Let's say that Alabama wants to continue recruiting Arch. They want to take two quarterbacks in this class potentially. If Arch wants to commit, I'm sure they're going to go ahead and take him. How that maybe affects the Eli Holstein recruitment, I think that would be a whole other layer. But, there's a lot of hypotheticals that would play into that. But I think nevertheless, it does come down to Texas or Georgia. And if Alabama goes ahead and cancels that official visit that they have with Arch, I believe that's for the June 17th weekend, then I'm sure LSU, Florida, Ole Miss, they'll be campaigning to go ahead and fill that spot.
This gets interesting the last thing is this gets interesting in the 2024 domino effect too. So Ohio State has their guy in Dylan Raiola. They're done. But the top three guys might not necessarily be impacted by Eli Holstein, but will be impacted by how this plays out for Arch Manning and for CJ Carr and Julian Sayin and Jaden Davis. If Dante Moore goes to Notre Dame, I think that makes CJ Carr probably lean Michigan if he's not already leaning Michigan. He is Lloyd Carr's grandson. But Notre Dame is definitely a player there. Jaden Davis, that's a little bit of a wild card. He's currently the #1 quarterback in the 2024 class. New rankings come out in June. We'll see if that plays out, how that works out. But Georgia is a player there. The safe bets are he could go to North Carolina and not be impacted by this. Tennessee, not necessarily be impacted by this, although I don't know if following Nico Iamaleava to Knoxville makes him get on the field early, and I'm talking about Davis. And then Julian Sayin, where the feeling that I've gotten is that where Arch goes, Sayin goes the other place. So if Arch goes to Georgia, Sayin leaning Texas. If Arch goes to Texas, Sayin leading Georgia, that bodes well for both teams getting 5-star quarterbacks and very, very talented players. But it does certainly have an impact on all these guys, even in the next class, about where they're going to go. I don't think any 2024 quarterback, especially at that high level, would be thrilled sitting behind Arch Manning. Not only because he's Arch Manning, but there will be pressure to play him. There's absolutely no doubt about that. He's going to be a name, and the following will continue there. He certainly won't be able to be as sheltered as he is now in terms of talking and being on the field and being seen and all those things. So I think this definitely impacts not only Arch's decision and Dante Moore's decision, but down the line to those 2024 kids, including DJ Lagway possibly.
Yeah, this is certainly a domino, but the ultimate domino is Arch Manning and where he decides to go, whether that be Texas, Georgia, or any other wild card that could come into play. You mentioned DJ Lagway. Alabama's been pursuing him hard early in his recruitment, and they've continued to do that as more schools have gotten involved. Alabama is a school I'm watching pretty closely with Lagway, and based on Holstein committing today, I think that would almost be a perfect fit for Lagway just because he wouldn't have to go in to Alabama and start immediately. Not necessarily that he would have to in some other places, but you look at a school like Oklahoma that is also recruiting Lagway pretty heavily, or LSU, he would probably have to play earlier at those two places. So getting him in a system where he could develop and, learn an offense. I think Alabama would be a good fit for him at this point with Holstein's commitment today. But like I said, the ultimate domino is Arch Manning. If he decides to go to Texas or Georgia or whatever, that affects Julian Sayin, that affects Jaden Davis, that affects CJ Carr, like you said. There's a lot of moving pieces that go around this. And Gorney, you might be able to speak to this a little bit more, but if we're looking at quarterback talent within two classes from 2023 and 2024, if you combine both of those into one big overall picture, it's probably the most talent we've had in two classes in quite a while, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. It brings me back to that Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields battle. And JT Daniels was in that class, which he has not panned out yet. But in terms of talent, was certainly up with those guys. And you could argue, was right there with them at the Army game. That 18 class with Trevor Lawrence, JT Daniels, Matt Corral was in that class, was super, super special. But 17 was good, but not great. Davis Mills, who's an NFL starter now, was number 1. Jake Fromm, who had a tremendous college career, was there. 19 was far weaker. Bo Nix and Graham Mertz and Ryan Helinski and Sam Powell led the way there. So, yeah, it's interesting because 23 is phenomenal, especially at pro style. And then 24 is shaping up to be loaded as well at quarterback, both pro style and dual threat. And they're all sort of looking at a lot of the same schools and waiting for them to make decisions. And so that jostling and jockeying for what position and where they're going and all that stuff seems to have started with Eli Holstein, but it will trickle down. I mean, at some point, Dante Moore will pick a school, whether it's Notre Dame, LSU, maybe Michigan, visiting Texas A&M, maybe Oregon. And then we'll see kind of how it goes once, Arch Manning comes off the board and how 2024 plays out, especially as these guys make early decisions. But that is enough time. That is Nick Harris. I'm Adam Gorney. Eli Holstein to Alabama.